we have got a little bit of business to take care of before we get down to the regular meeting. We need to take care of our organizational meeting this evening. First, let me make some introductions of who we have here this evening. We have Mr. Bob Schwartz for the Bowling Green District. Mr. I cannot see, Scott Sullivan for Western Caroline. Mr. Purcell Minor for Mattaponi. Mr. George Weber for Madison. And Dr. Carol Horton for Port Royal. County staff this evening, we have Craig Pennington, the county planner. Chris McKenzie, the county attorney. David Nunnally, our senior environmental planner. And I am Lisa Zeck. First order of the business this evening is the Pledge of Allegiance. So everyone please stand.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag, to the republic, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, our first order of business this evening is the election of a chairman for the 2022 Planning Commission. I will open the floor for nominations or a motion.
I'd make a motion for Purcell Minor to be the chair for this year.
Second.
Mr. Weber motions for Mr. Minor. Mr. Schwartz seconds. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay.
Nay.
Motion carries. Motion carries. Congratulations, Mr. Minor. I'm going to turn the meeting over to you.
Thank you very much. Next order of business is electing the vice chairman.
I would like to suggest Mr. Bob Schwartz to be the vice chair.
Second.
A nomination on the floor for Mr. Schwartz for vice chair that has been seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carries.
Congratulations. Congratulations, gentlemen.
I think.
The next order of business is adopting the rules of order discussion.
Mr. Chairman, the only thing I had noticed that I would make a suggestion that we change is when an individual presents themselves to make a comment at a public hearing, the present rules call for them to state their name and address.
That's correct.
Some people may be somewhat hesitant to do so, and in order to conform to the way the Board of Supervisors request that information, they request name and voting district. And I would suggest that we change our wording to reflect such.
So we would do the same thing that the Board of Supervisors asked for.
Yes, sir.
I'm okay with that.
Instead of the name, we can use the voting district.
Just the voting
Their
district.
name and voting district, yes, sir.
So we need to make a motion on that.
Yes, just make a motion to approve the rules of order with the changes as stated.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and proper that we change the floor mats to
Name and
Name.
voting district.
And
take
voting
away
district.
the name and district. That's correct.
Yeah, just name and district,
Mhm.
no address required.
Okay.
I can, for the record, I can just put on the record that the amendment on before the commission is to Article 5 of the Rules Public Hearing Protocol, Subsection 5, which would, as amended, read as follows: when members of the public offer comment, they need to clearly state their name and voting district prior to making their comments.
Thank you, I agree.
Thank you.
Chris.
Next order is establishing dates and time for the meeting.
We need to have a vote.
Yeah.
We have
So
to
I
vote
think
that
we're,
first.
we're at the all in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed, nay. Motion carries.
Do we need to accept the rest of this?
Yes,
Right.
next, establishes a date and time for the meeting. Can I have a motion?
Make a motion to accept the date and time for the meeting, planning commission meetings.
According to the schedule we got, correct?
Correct.
So I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carries.
Okay, can I have a motion to adjourn the organization meeting?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we close the organizational meeting.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay.
Okay, I'd like to call the regular meeting to order. First, approve of the minutes. So we don't have the minutes at this time. We don't have any minutes at this time.
None.
Next, unfinished business. SPEX -15, 2021. Staff report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Excuse me. The applicant for SPEX 15-2021 has requested deferral to extend the opportunity for a site visit to the Planning Commission since the snow interrupted the site visits during January. So he's requesting deferral to extend that opportunity to you for February to come see the site.
I think, Purcell, I think since the applicant has requested deferral, and I agree because we haven't gone and looked at the site, I believe that we should accept this deferral.
Okay.
And
That is
so
correct.
if you need a motion, I'll make a motion
Yeah.
that we defer
You do.
SPEX 15-2021
And I would just clarify that's at the request of the applicant.
at the request of the applicant.
Thank you, Chris.
Request of the act.
Yep.
Correct.
Okay.
You make
I'll
a
second
motion?
it.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. We are deferring it to the February Planning Commission meeting, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
And Mr. Chairman, before we move to the next case, can I ask if the second week of February is good to start scheduling those site visits?
Yes.
Second week of February? Okay, thank you.
You better check with the weather person.
Yes. Right.
That's why we're not
Check
doing
with the
next week.
Weatherman
Yeah.
first, please.
Okay, now we're gonna open up the public hearing.
All right.
Lisa, you
Got it. Okay.
protocol?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. The purpose of a public hearing is for the Caroline County Planning Commission to listen carefully to the verbal expression of position and opinion from the citizens of Caroline County. Public hearings are not question and answer sessions or debates, and all statements should be addressed to the chair. When members of the public offer comment, they clearly need to state their name and voting district prior to their comments. Applicants will be allowed 15 minutes to introduce information regarding the matter advertised for public hearing. Persons speaking at public hearings are respectfully requested to keep comments brief, not to exceed 3 minutes, and to address only those issues pertinent to the matters advertised for public hearing. After the public hearing has been closed, the applicant or their representative will be allowed 10 minutes to address any issues identified by the public.
Mr. Chair, before this application starts, I must recuse myself from this application because I've worked with this client previously, and I just don't want any conflict of interest to be involved. So I recuse myself from this application. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
And I just want to clarify, Mr. Weber, for quorum purposes, that's you're making that disqualification under the Conflicts of Interest Act.
That is correct, sir.
All right.
Yes,
Thank you.
conflict of interest.
And that's due to your having provided architectural services to the applicant, not necessarily on this application, but
Not to this application,
okay.
but services, architectural.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you,
Mr. Chairman, I'd also like to let you know I'm going to abstain from the discussion and the vote tonight. I also have a wedding venue, and just out of surety to, so there's no potential conflict of interest or perception of such, I think it'd be best if I abstain from the vote tonight and discussion.
Do we have quorum then? Okay. We got 3.
yes. And
That's because of conflicts of interest?
no, my understanding, Mr. Sullivan is not. He's just abstaining to avoid the appearance of any conflict, but
Perception.
that's not under. He is not required to take action under the Conflict of Interest Act. Mr. Weaver did, and because he did, his recusal does not affect the quorum, and you have a quorum still tonight to act, even with Mr. Sullivan's abstention. So the short version is you can proceed.
Okay.
Okay. We open up with SPEX-18-2021. Mr. James, owner of application. Can we have a staff report?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The applicant's requesting a previously approved special exception for a special events facility be repealed and replaced to allow an expansion of the facility. In September 2020, the Board of Supervisors approved SPEX 06-2019 for a special events facility on 3.1 acres at 23134 Panola Road. Per the approved general development plan, the facility would include 2 event barns, a tent area, and parking. The new special exception request expands the area of the special exception to 6.2 acres and will include 2 event barns, 2 bathhouses, an event preparation building, tent area, and parking. A house under construction on the same property will not be part of the special events venue. The special events area designated to the general development plan identifies the location of all activities associated with the wedding venue. All special events parking is proposed to be located behind the crest of the hill on the property and would not be visible from Panola Road. The subject property, containing 125 acres, is bordered by the Mattaponi Springs Golf Course to the north and other residential properties on the remaining borders. A map created by staff that identifies adjacent structures and approximate distances to the proposed facility is included with this staff report. VDOT did not offer any new comments on this request, but comments on the previous request regarding commercial entrance were addressed by the applicant. The 2030 comprehensive plan states this area to be agricultural preservation. The plan further states this designation is intended to provide areas to encourage economic development and to preserve agricultural land for the viability of county's agricultural sector. These areas are intended to encourage and promote the orderly and responsible growth of agricultural production activities, including crops, livestock, dairy, poultry, and related activities that are harmonious with agricultural activities. There is very little land actually zoned agricultural preservation in the county. The predominant zoning designation is rural preservation, where farming and agricultural uses are permitted. While special events facilities are not permitted to use in the AP district, it is allowed by special exception in the RP district, which is the current zoning designation for this property. Route 601 is designated as a rural local road in the comprehensive plan. The 2013 average daily traffic count was 420 vehicles per day. Between 2013 and 2019, there were 14 accidents on Route 601, 9 with property damage, and 5 with injuries. The following conditions are carried over from the previous special exception permit with no changes. However, staff would like to offer another condition that the 2 event barns could not be used at the same time.
So add that to number 11, that's correct?
It would actually be number 25. Yes.
Thank you, Craig. Is the applicant present?
Yes.
Good evening. I'm James Olaf, who have lived in the Western District for just over 40 years. We got the special exception back in September of 2020, and we had one barn and at that time, and we planned a second barn, which was really going to sit behind the house as a wedding preparation barn, i.e. where the grooms and the other men could get ready in one room and the women could get ready in another room. We changed that plan a little bit to convert, instead of putting another barn behind the house, we're now putting a carriage house that we've been collecting a number of old carriages that we'll display in it. So in the exterior, it'll appear as a carriage house, but on the interior will be the two wedding preparation rooms. Shortly after we got the first special exception in September 2020, something we never imagined happened, and that is we were approached, I think it was in October, by a site scout for a production company looking for a rustic barn in Virginia to film a show for public television. We never imagined something like that would happen. They were very interested in the barn in particular because of its architecture, and they felt architecturally it fit perfectly, but they were concerned that it wasn't large enough on the inside to accommodate a number of cooking stations, etc. They said, we're very interested, so we had to make a very quick decision as to whether we wanted to build a larger barn to have the opportunity to have that show filmed there. They returned in February 21, expressing much deeper interest. So much so that caused us to make the decision that we would build a bigger barn. And they had a deadline, a serious deadline, because they wanted to come on site on August 30. The question became, could we get this much larger barn built in that time frame? We talked to our barn builder who had worked with us and built a number of barns, and he felt we could make that deadline, and we did make that deadline. I mean, about as close to the deadline as you could be. We were laying sod and putting down HVAC units on the 28th and 29th of August, knowing they were coming on the 30th. They came in on the 30th, set up for about a week and a half, filmed for a couple weeks, and then did a week and a half or 2 week wind down, which simply means unpacking everything. And that show is called The Great American Recipe, and it will show this summer on all national public television shows. And we have the right, under what's called the location agreement, we will get a film credit at the end of it, which will indicate that The Great American Recipe was produced and filmed on site at the barns at Mattaponi Springs in Ruther Glen, Virginia. So that's how we ended up with a larger barn. In the interim, we have hired a full-time event coordinator. The last I knew, she must still be stuck in traffic. She was at a meeting this evening, but she'll be coming, and she's working for us full-time, and we're now in the process of preparing all of our publicity for that. The house is under construction, nearly completed, and we should have our certificate of occupancy by the end of February. Similar, the carriage house would also be done by that time. And the carriage house was a little different because, as I said before, we had planned to put another barn back there. We decided to downsize it a little bit and bring a little more character to the property by having what appears to externally to be a carriage house, architecturally matching the construction of the home, which is a fairly large home, 6 bedrooms, 6.5 bath. In addition to our event coordinator, whose name is Angela Bowles. She's been in the business for over 20 years, very experienced in it. Also with me tonight is Brendan Simmons, who's the general manager of the golf club. We're branding to link both the golf course and the barns together in the concept that some wedding parties like to have golf. And in fact, we're getting a surprising number of people who are interested in that. So we're doing a bit of rebranding, and that's why we're sort of relabeling the golf course as the golf club at Mattaponi Springs, and the barns being the barns at Mattaponi Springs. Also with me tonight is my son, Adam, who's in charge of all the construction. He's construction manager on the site, interfaces with all the contractors. Adam lives in the Mattaponi district. In fact, he lives directly across the road from the barns. He joined us after finishing a stint in the U.S. Army, where he served in both Iraq and Afghanistan. So with that background, we intentionally, in this specs request, we intentionally didn't add any additional requirements. I mean, we were tempted to say we'd like to have more events or broader time periods, but we kept everything identical to what was agreed upon with the first specification. Days in which events can occur, the number of events, the number of attendees at those events, to make this specs as easy to be accepted as possible. There's no additional request or on our part at all. All we're adding is a second barn. There was discussion I heard earlier about adding a requirement that we cannot have two events going on at the same time. And we have no problem with that at all. In fact, our event coordinator, we had this discussion before this topic even came up, and she said, based on her prior experience, that would be the worst possible thing to do, because it's impossible to serve two masters at the same time, and you might let one of your guests or clients down with that opportunity. So I think that's all of the background. Again, there's nothing new being requested in here. All we're saying is that we now have another barn as an option. We've expanded the footprint a little bit, only because the event coordinator has indicated that some people, while I think that the front of the barns overlooking the lake is about as pretty a spot as you can have for a wedding ceremony, she's indicated that a lot of people like to be on the edge of a woodside or a wood line. And so we've got some other potential ceremony sites where the actual wedding ceremony, and that's why there's an additional acreage in the footprint. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Anybody else want to speak? Now we open up the public hearing. Anybody want to speak for, favor this?
Or against.
Or against?
Yeah.
Yes.
Anybody, this is the public comment period. You have 3 minutes. Just state your name and your voting district, not your address.
Good evening. I'm not a resident of Caroline County. I'm enjoying my time up here working with Mr. Olaf and his organization. I've got a prepared statement. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for the opportunity to speak before you tonight. I come to this hearing in support of Mr. Jim Olaf. My name is Tony Pitts. I'm the president and owner of Pitts & Associates. My company specializes in the construction of high-end new residences and historic restorations and renovations. About a year ago, Mr. Olaf contacted my firm to construct a new residence at 23134 Panola Road. As we developed plans and specifications for the project, Mr. Olaf explained to me that the structure must convey a true sense of history. The structure must evoke an impression that it was originally built in the mid-1800s. For inspiration, Mr. Olaf and I studied architecture of that period. More importantly, we studied structures built in and around Caroline County. Typically, budget is of the utmost importance for most clients. Mr. Olaf, however, was more concerned with what was right, building a home that reflected the true essence of a lasting historic residence. In addition to a rich architectural heritage, Mr. Olaf insisted that we incorporate elements of the former structure which once occupied the site. It was important to him that we honor and recognize the details out of respect for the previous owners. Today, we are only a few weeks away from completion of the stately Hilltop structure. I'm not sure if any of you have had the opportunity to visit the site or simply drive past. If you have, I think you'll agree that the new home is evidence of Mr. Olaf's commitment to create a period structure complementing the rich architectural history of Caroline County, to invest in materials and craftsmen of the highest quality, and to honor those who once occupied the site. It is with great pleasure and pride that I've been able to assist Mr. Olaf in making his vision become a reality. I hope that this body and others within the community recognize the many benefits and value associated with this project. I also hope that this body and community recognize that all of his projects demonstrate the highest quality and unmatched integrity. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission and staff. My name is David Stork, and I'm a resident of the Bowling Green District. Pleasure to be with you here tonight. I had the pleasure of also coming in 2020 and speaking on behalf of the applicant, and I do so again tonight. I've owned Stork Funeral Home in Bowling Green for 31 years, and so as a business person here in the county, I'm here to talk from that perspective. We all want growth. We all want good growth. We all want businesses to come to Caroline. And a rising tide raises all boats. And I've had the opportunity to go down and see the facility. And I'm here to tell you that it's an asset to, I think, an asset to Caroline County. And the addition of the new barn, I see where it can only be a positive addition to what's already occurring there. So I highly recommend that y'all approve this request. Every business in this county, we all struggle. We're a small locality, and every business impacts other business. It's a butterfly effect. And I own a funeral home, so that sounds funny, but every business impacts every other business. And I look forward to having a venue where folks maybe that would come to my funeral home might have an opportunity to have a venue where they might have a reception following. Not everybody's a member of a church. Not everybody has access to a club. Lodging is a big problem here in our county. I'm not real sure of all the plans for this house, but lodging is a detriment. The lack of lodging is a detriment to our county. I had the pleasure of serving as the mayor of the town of Bowling Green for 10 years, and it's hard to attract events and folks to a locality if there's not lodging. And so I highly, I ask that you all approve this exception. And also from a personal standpoint, when I was the mayor of Bowling Green and issues came before our council, I would always look at the issue. I would always try to research things, and then I would look at the applicant and I would say, where's my comfort factor that this person or this entity is going to do the right thing? And I have a huge comfort factor with Mr. Olaf. I have a 15-year-old son. I have 4 boys. My 15-year-old plays golf on the Caroline High School golf team. And Caroline County enjoys, our golf team, our kids' golf team enjoys the best home course anywhere in our district, Mattaponi Springs Golf Course. Now, our golf team in Caroline High School is not ranked #1 in the district, I can tell you. I don't even want to tell you where we're ranked, but we have the best home course anywhere in the district.
I have to ask you to finish up. Your time's up. You have to finish up.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that. Thank you.
Is anyone else for or against this applicant? Is anyone for or against? Come forward.
Good evening. My name is Albert J. Lilly Jr. My wife and I, Judith G. Lilly, reside in the Reedy Church District. I'm here in opposition to the request. I spoke in opposition to the request previously before the Planning Commission as well as the Board of Supervisors. I call your attention only to certain factors that I believe are not contested or uncontroverted. Although somebody may say something to the contrary, they don't establish the facts in support of their position. The conclusion that I might have left for last would be, in my opinion, that a vote in favor of this project further diminishes and results in destruction of rural preservation district. A vote in favor of the project is in favor of those who come there to party versus the residents of the area. A vote in favor is to benefit those who sponsor and profit from the activities there and not the residents. A vote in favor is in disregard of the safety of the residents. The application checklist on page 4 mentions several factors. This proposal is out of character, and there is no established pattern of development. There's nothing similar to this in the area. Is there an impact on adjacent properties? There would be traffic, noise, night hours. Impact on safety or welfare of persons in the area? Again, traffic. Events provide alcohol consumption. Drivers on Panola Road after drinking. And when they leave Panola Road, they're either on 207, 301, and who knows where else. Considering conformance with the comprehensive plan, there's nothing similar. As noted by the planner, this is in an agricultural district where the special exception is not permitted. Because the property is zoned rural preservation, the exception can be permitted. Traffic impacts the vehicles. Again, impaired drivers. We know alcohol is going to be served with or without permits.
I have to ask you to finish up, sir.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else?
Good evening. I'm Kevin Whiteman. I live on Dodge City Road, Bowling Green. I'm also the county building official, and these structures that Mr. Olof has built, my department's personally inspected and issued the certificate of occupancies on. I think this is a great use. Mr. Olof spoke to the cooking shows that we had this past summer, 30 plus days. We filmed out there, multiple traffic, catering trucks. There were no issues whatsoever. Mr. Olof has not asked for any more number of events, no larger load for what's going on. And what he's built out there is top notch. I know everyone would kind of like to have this stuff and they say not in my neighborhood, but I'll be honest with you. My youngest son got married and we had to go all the way over to Stratford Hall to hold his wedding. It'd be awesome, I think, to have some sort of facility here like Mr. Olaf built for our residents around here instead of having to go all the way over to Westmoreland County. My dealings with Mr. Olaf and his organization go back to building of the golf course and everything he has done. He's kept his word. He has his conditions. He doesn't want to change those, and everything he's done is top notch. I recommend that we approve this. Thank you.
Thank you. Is anyone else?
Good evening. My name is Valerie Gordon. I'm from the Mattaponi District, and I live at 22115 Panola Road, which is about approximately 1 mile from the event venue. My husband and I have lived on Panola Road for 44 years. We have 4 parcels of land on this road, and one of those I own is adjoining the property. So therefore, I received a letter. Most of the residents aren't even aware of this expansion. I've talked to them the last couple of days, but I didn't get my letter until about 2 weeks ago. So I'm sure they don't even know what's going on. But I know that there are rules why those aren't sent out to everyone, but it does impact everyone. I don't know if any of you all have ever been around when the buses come down the road and all the school traffic, but that alone is more than that road can handle. And talking about having another amount of vehicles, whether it's 100, 200 per event, is really crazy. Just because something is permitted in under this use, it doesn't really mean that it should happen. And I think that due to, my family and I were opposed to this previously due to the negative effects that it would cause on their road because it's very rural, narrow, and windy. And if those 3.1 acres that were passed a year ago, that venue is not really up and running yet, and it's not supposed to open according to the website until April of 22. So if the review is done in 1 year, that would be April of 23. So we don't even know so far what those effects really are. And until we can find out what those effects are, how can we pass to double that size of the footprint? There still has not been any information. No one knows how much revenue this will bring the county. I know so far that the real estate taxes on those buildings and the real estate is only $4,000 and some dollars per year. That's the 2022 tax bill. And there would be personal property taxes, but as far as gross receipts, that to me would be the thing that would be you should check on to see how much that would bring in. I'm asking that the board members, this planning board, would please look into the impact and effect that this would have before allowing it to expand when we don't even know the effect of this 3 acres. Also, please check on the revenue that this would bring in and see if this would really benefit the county and the residents. And I'm just asking that you would vote no. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, lady and gentlemen, Planning Commission. Thank you for what you do. I'm Tony Lippa and I live in the Bowling Green District, but I've been in Caroline County for over 42 years. And I came here, first of all, proud to say as a Virginia State Trooper and honored to be your sheriff in the 5th term. I met the Olafs, Mr. Olaf, back in 1998 when he was building the golf course, and I was a state police first sergeant. I've watched this man, his organization, do nothing but good things for Caroline County. I know when he first started, in order to even get it approved, he moved his entrance and exit just to accommodate the neighbors. He's done this. I've seen this throughout all of the time. And when I look at nothing else being added into this, other than the fact that he's making the property more beautiful and more, as far as I'm concerned, as you heard Kevin Whiteman say, for our county residents to have a nice venue. I know we have venues and they're very nice in the west end. It's good to have one central and towards the east end of our county. And I'm very much in favor of y'all voting yes for this project. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is anyone else for this, against? Is anyone else? Public hearing is closed.
I had some questions of the applicant.
Okay.
So, good evening. I was on the commission when we approved your first expansion.
Yes.
A couple years ago.
Right.
And one of the reasons we had several residents speak against it because of the narrowness of Pinella Road, and it is very rural out there and very curvy. But for me, one of the reasons I approved it at that time was my understanding was weddings were already allowed at the golf course. And so we were just expanding it so you could have an area specific for the wedding. So you already had a possibility, I believe, if the staff told me correctly, weddings could have already taken place there, and then we expanded it so that there's a barn, because we went out and visited it. Am I correct?
Yes, we went to go visit it. The golf course was allowed to have weddings with their original permit.
Right.
And this is adjacent to the golf course.
Yeah. So now we are talking about have you used that barn at all yet for weddings?
Yes.
Or events? Okay,
Yes.
You have. Okay. And so now we're talking about still using that barn, but having a larger facility too? Is that correct?
Yes, but it doesn't change the
Amount of people.
even the total number of events doesn't change. We're capped at 70, the number of people for each event. So it changes. Nothing changes in the way of activity at the site.
So this is, the picture we received is what you would like to build? Or
That's built. We built that.
That's the one you're talking about that you have built?
Yes, we have two barns. They've both been built. This was the one we built rapid fire to be able to attract the PBS filming.
Okay. And so you're asking us to use both facilities?
Both barns.
Okay.
Not simultaneously.
Okay. But we need to approve to use the second building. We need to approve the special exception. Is that what staff is telling us?
Yes. So right now, the special exception that was approved in 2020 only encompasses the first barn and the carriage house and the parking area, 3.1 acres. So this would expand the area of the special exception to 6.2 acres, would continue to have the original approval and the extra 3 acres added to the north.
So we're adding about 3 acres, not 6.
3.1, correct. We're adding 3.1 to 3.1 to get 6.2.
And then the home, there's been some improvements made to the home there.
We tried to save the original home. The original home was built in 1848 by Dr. Wesley Wright, whose father founded Wright's Chapel Methodist Church. Yeah, that's the new house.
Okay.
We spent about $50,000 trying to save that house, and it wasn't savable because the brick foundation underneath had truly collapsed. And frankly, it's a bit of a miracle that the house didn't collapse on its own when the Andersons were living there. So one of the things we did with the architects and the builders, the front section of the home that we just built is dimensionally identical to the original home built by Dr. Wesley Wright.
Okay.
And on the first floor, there are two rooms on the first floor on each side. One of those is going to be a dedicated study to Dr. Wesley Wright. The other room is going to be a dedicated library to the Andersons, who were the last people that lived there and who strongly supported my efforts to build the golf course. Rachel Anderson is an extraordinary woman, although a good homegrown farm girl who very familiar with Virginia wildlife and did many great things, was athletic director of Randolph-Macon College, a very, very interesting lady. So the front section of the house really is smaller than it should be, but we wanted to replicate what the original home looked like from the front, and then we've added sections on the back to make it a much larger home.
Okay, so that explains it a little bit better for me, and I've been on the property.
But we're not.
I took a tour.
I think the important thing to note here, we're not increasing the volume of activity beyond what was already approved with the first barn. We just have a second barn, but we're still limited to 70 events. We're still limited to the number of people that can attend those events. We still have the same limitation on the number of hours of operation, days of week, and everything. So from the standpoint of, we're not increasing the activity that's going to come from this. It's identical. We just have an additional barn in which we can do things. And as I said, we gladly would agree to not have simultaneous events in both barns at the same time.
Do you foresee in the near future asking for more events?
We're tempted, but let's see what life brings us.
What about a tour of the facility so we can see, what you're asking with this new barn addition? Would you be willing to allow the commissioners to come out again?
Well, I have no problem with coming out, but I do have a problem with time delays. I mean, candidly, we've tried to make this request as simple as possible. We've asked for nothing in addition in activity. It's not going to change the number of cars going in and out of the site, the number of people coming there. All we want to do is be able to use the larger barn when people are interested in a larger barn as opposed to the smaller one.
Yeah, but for me, representing, the citizens of Caroline County, I always have to see what I'm dealing with. I mean, that's me.
Well, you're all more than welcome to come and see the site. We'd love to show it to you.
And I'm sorry to interject, but I think procedurally, we skipped over, Mr. Olaf, your opportunity to respond to public comment. If you have anything in addition to, so you have up to 10 minutes to respond.
No, my point,
okay.
Yeah, my point was a simple one. I didn't say it probably as directly as I should. What we're doing doesn't really change anything. It's from a traffic standpoint, from all other aspects, because we're not changing the number of events or the timing of the events or anything else. The only thing we're saying is customers now have an option. Would you like to use this barn or would you like to use that barn?
And I don't think you're changing it in the immediate future, but, representing the county, we have to consider what's going to happen in the future, because there is potential there, for a lot more events in the future.
Well,
but maybe not right now.
Yeah, but well, my point's the simple one. If we feel we need more events, we have to come back here and make our case.
That's true.
Yeah, and that's more than fair. I mean, that's why we didn't ask at this time to increase the number of events.
Yeah. And
I think it's likely we'll never use 7. To be candid, I don't think we'll use 70 events in a year. I don't think it's going to happen.
Yeah, but that's why I would like to see the capacity for the future. As the population grows, what's the possibility of it for the future?
Well, that would only be in the number of events, not the number of people at an event. I mean, the bulk of the events, the lion's share of the events that are going to occur in the barn will be weddings. And we have 70, we're limited to 70 events, 50 of which we can have, I think, up to 100 or 150 people, and 20 where we can have up to 200 people. And we haven't asked that that be changed at all.
Bob, got anything to say?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, Mr. Olive. I remember going to your property, and it is beautiful. From my recollection, there was a barn that had just been completed that was to be used for equipment storage that was towards the rear of what is on this diagram as a parking lot.
No, that equipment barn's much farther back.
Okay, that's
far back beyond the parking area.
Okay, that's what I recalled.
Yeah.
Now you want to add 2 bathhouses.
Bathrooms.
Restroom.
They're not.
Okay,
they're restrooms.
And that's what threw me.
I'm sorry. I should have corrected that. They're restrooms.
My question was, well, are we in the future? Are we going to seek a campground where we need bathhouses? But
no, sorry.
That's all right. And also the wedding tent, which I know a lot of venues do have, and I've seen them. So really, that's what you're increasing your footprint on, would be the 2 bathrooms, the barn, and the tent. Is that correct?
Mainly the barn. I think we had a potential tent area. It's not going to be a permanent tent area. Right. There may be times when people will ask that they want to be outside under a tent. Frankly, we'd like to avoid that if possible, but some people like that environment.
Yes, sir. Now, originally, the special exemption that was granted, we did in September of 2020, I think.
Yeah.
Right after obtaining that special exemption, if you can recall approximately, how many events have you had since that time at your location?
Very few, because we've been under construction.
Okay.
So we've sort of deferred. I don't think people like to drive up and see a beautiful barn, but a house under construction with a dumpster sitting next to the house.
Understood. Because I was going to inquire of the sheriff's office if there had been an increase in motor vehicle accidents or any other type of incident that would tend to raise a yellow or red flag. So that's, I don't anticipate that that's something you can answer, but that is something.
To my knowledge, while we didn't have a lot of events, we had the filming. And the filming was no small operation. It was between 80 and 100 people every day, lighting people, the host and 3 judges, 10 participants, 80 to 100 people coming in and out every day from August 30 to October 6. Yes. As somebody mentioned, I forgot, we had tractor trailer catering trucks bringing in a tractor trailer full of food for the people to cook, and to my knowledge, there have been no incidents.
Yeah, I was just wondering if Sheriff Flipper's office has had any calls for drunks, disorderlies, motor vehicle accidents, people cutting donuts or anything of that nature. Maybe Sheriff Flipper would like to come forward.
I would just make one comment in that regard. The production company, I don't know whose requirement it is, but in the location agreement, there will be and was no alcoholic beverages on site during production and filming. That was an absolute requirement, except for assisting with food preparation in some fashion.
Mr. Chairman, with your permission, I would like to see if Sheriff Flipper would like to respond to my inquiry.
Yes, step up.
As a matter of fact, I think you'd find even the accidents probably down. We have not had any calls of what you've asked as far as drunk driving, that type of thing. And for those that travel Panola Road, we've had a logging operation going on. So we've had tractor trailers there. We've had, they're all logging there, and we haven't had any crashes that involve them, at least from my department. And as far as I'm concerned, when he's not asking for any more and we haven't had any issues, I don't know what else I can tell you other than the fact that VDOT, again, has approved it. It's okay. And with the logging operation, like I said, that's something that I thought we would have had some problems with, and we didn't, even around all the curves that they were talking about, even with the high water that we have. So
no drunks, no disorderlies, no vandalisms, nothing that would raise an eyebrow for law enforcement.
no, sir. If I had a problem with that, I'd let you guys know that. For those that go up and down through the road, most of the time, most of the people that live in a good old country road drive in the middle of the road, and I usually go through there and I see them, and all of a sudden, I know where the curves are. So hopefully that helps.
Thank you, Sheriff.
All right, Mr. Schwartz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. James, could you step forward again, please? The house on the property.
Yeah.
I'm not clear what that gonna be. What's your intention of the house? I didn't get that. That gonna be for people to come and see
Yes, people can rent the house. Wedding parties can stay there
in the
for
house?
the weekend. Yes. And frankly, from a safety standpoint, that's desirable because they can come in on a Friday night and stay for the weekend, and they're not going up and down Panola Road in the interim.
So are we approving use of the new barn or use of the new house, or both? I'm asking staff.
The house is not part of the special exception permit. For the house to be used as a overnight stay for wedding guests, things like that, then it would have to be permitted as a bed and breakfast, which would require another special exception permit. However, if you own a house in Caroline County, you can rent your house out to someone for a month, a week, however long you want. We don't get involved in people renting their own houses that are their houses. And so we'll have to look into this again.
Mr. Chairman, one question of staff, if you please. Mr. Pennington, I believe in the conditions that there is to be no overnight parking. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And I'm just wondering that if people are going to be staying there overnight, are they going to be removing their vehicles so that there's no overnight parking violation?
If they are attendees of the wedding, they will need to remove their vehicle when the wedding is over. That is what the condition states.
Are you aware of that, Mr. Olaf?
No.
Because I remember one of the conditions is that there be no overnight parking.
Right.
So if folks are going to be staying at the house overnight, then by the conditions, there can be no overnight parking.
Well, then, to me, then it would be appropriate to make an exception for that people who are staying in the home are permitted to park overnight, and only those people are permitted to park overnight.
And I think that poses a problem, sir, because this commission has already voted on those provisions. The Board of Supervisors has voted on those provisions and issued the special exemption. So we do not have the authority, I don't believe, and Mr. McKenzie can correct me, but we do not have the authority to grant an exception to that condition.
So, well, as of right now, the existing condition is correct, but the conditions are before you now, so you could amend them now if you were so inclined. But Mr. Schwartz, your point's well taken in that the law as it exists now is the conditions that are approved in 2020.
And I don't mean to create a conundrum here, but do we have the authority to alter the conditions that have been adopted by the Board of Supervisors?
Yeah, well, staff has suggested conditions here, and staff, correct me if I'm getting this wrong, but you are doing that anyway right now, in that you're expanding the land that would be applied to those conditions, and you're amending the existing special exception application. So if you wanted to amend the conditions, in addition to expanding the land to which it applies, if you wanted to amend the conditions, I think that would be procedurally appropriate. And it's in your discretion to recommend that amendment to the board. It is procedurally acceptable, I think, for you to do that now if you wanted to, but it is not what has been originally put before you. But I do think that it would fall within the realm of your discretion on this application.
Before I was to approve, overnight car parking too, I would need to know how many cars we're talking about and, where they're going to be parked. And
I agree with you.
I mean, I always do.
How do we police that, or how?
I always do a site visit. It sounds like to me we need some more information from staff, and the applicant need to maybe get back together and maybe present some more information to us on this, and maybe also schedule a site visit when we're ready to have more details ironed out before we continue with this application. That's my opinion.
And commissioners, if I could I'll just add a little bit of clarity. So in your packet, staff suggested conditions that were approved with SPX 06-2019, and suggested they remain the same for this SPX 18-2021. The condition you're talking about is number 11. It says overnight parking of motor recreational vehicles and or accommodations shall be prohibited. It would be appropriate, if you so wished, to amend the suggested conditions to whatever you think would address your concerns. But it is not within what's originally suggested, but you're allowed to do that. I hope that helps clarify that. In other words, there is a special exception that's approved for this property that allows the applicant to operate his venue as stated in that special exception. It is before you for amendment. What originally motivated that amendment was the increase in the land to which the special exception applies from 3 acres to 6 acres, but you could further amend it by changing the conditions if you wished. On the other hand, you could vote against.
Without overstepping our bounds.
That's correct. And I guess one more point of clarity is you don't need to do that. You could also proceed without amending the conditions in any way.
I'm sorry, we could proceed, what, sir?
Without amending the conditions. There's no requirement that you amend the conditions.
And I guess back to staff, if we do amend the conditions, how is it to be monitored? I think I worked myself into a corner here.
So conditions would be treated the same way as zoning violations. It'd be complaint based. And so if someone complained, then we would investigate.
I think if
Mr. Schwartz, there's also a 1-year review and 2-year review, and then reviews every 5 years after that. And so there are the board of supervisor reviews in place to monitor that as well.
All right, thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Olin.
thank you.
Staff, we ready to make a motion?
Mr. Chairman, whereas special exception request SPEX-18-2021 for all of special events facility appears to be generally consistent with the goals and objectives of the comprehensive plan and future land use map. And whereas the public necessity, convenience, general welfare, and good zoning practices warrants the approval of this request, I recommend that SPEX-18-2021 be forwarded to the Board of Supervisors with a recommendation of approval.
Second.
Okay, so the motion is to forward it to, Mr. Swartz motion to forward it to the board with a recommendation of approval. Mr. Minor seconded, and that is with the conditions as suggested by staff.
With the conditions.
All
With the
right.
conditions, yes.
All in favor say aye.
If there's any discussion here on the
Yeah.
motion, you're entitled to have discussion now.
Yeah.
Or we
So
can call a vote.
you're saying no with the conditions of no parking, overnight parking?
The existing condition would remain the same, which is no overnight parking on the property.
Okay, but to me, that doesn't sound like what the applicant's asking for. So for me, I feel like, we need a delay and more information, but there's a motion on the floor, so.
And just in the matter of discussion, Mr. Olaf is not asking for them, but I think my motion includes the existing conditions as they were, regardless of his request to overlook those.
Mhm.
Because he hadn't actually thought of that according to what he just stated.
Are we ready for a vote? All in.
Motion on the floor, right?
Mhm. No more discussion? Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay.
Nay, because I've explained why. I think, it needs to be explored further, but nay.
The motion carries.
Motion carries. Okay. Motion carries.
Any other matters?
No, sir, we do not have any in all matters tonight.
Got a motion for adjournment.
Second.
Okay.
You were
Yeah.
asking
Maxwell, a
for- So motion to adjourn.
Okay. Got it?
Second.
Say, okay. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.